morning. The Public Safety Committee will come to order. It's 9:32 a.m., July 31st, 2024. I'm Robert Kettle, Chair of the Public Safety Committee. Will the committee clerk please call the roll?
Excuse me. Councilmember Hollingsworth. Councilmember Moore.
Present.
Council President Nelson.
Present.
Councilmember Saka.
Here.
Chair Kettle.
Here.
Chair, there are 4 members present.
Thank you. Thank you. If there's no objection, the agenda will be adopted. Hearing and seeing no objection, the agenda is adopted. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I really appreciate it, particularly our public commenters. It's important to have this opportunity to hear from community. We listen. For example, the Pioneer Square Historical Commission, when we had our vacant building abatement bill, we heard a lot of different voices on the automatic license plate reader bill, the ALPR, and also testimony on the dangers of street racing. You know, this commentary, this public comment, led to amendments that made our bills better. And we need to listen and critically hear in your voice to hear your different perspectives and your different experiences. Also, we need to note, and this is important too, that public comment is not only time that council members hear comments on the issues of the day. You know, for one thing, they could be emailed in addition to any verbal comments. We have meetings in our offices. I have meetings in my office and in community, which is very important. I've had meetings with our District 7 Neighborhood Council, and don't be surprised, but in grocery stores and restaurants, and even while I'm walking my dogs. And of course, this doesn't count emails that come in and other types of correspondence. Very important to note this public comment. I also want to take a moment to recognize a very important point too, regarding that at times we have disinformation and misinformation. You know, for example, you know, obviously a group of some sort had a talking point that the SCORE jail was a private jail. You know, that is disinformation. And then when it gets echoed out, that's misinformation. And as we've seen at the national level, misinformation can be like a virus, you know, impacting what we see and what we hear, and impacts our democracy. And, you know, clearly there are policy points that we can say is politics and we should be debating and hearing and having conversations about. But like on that fact point regarding is SCORE a private jail or a public, you know, that is, you know, goes to disinformation and information. And, you know, we see this at the national level, and we do want to avoid this at the local level. And as one would note, disinformation and misinformation can drive one crazy. Also, a thing that's come up in committee meetings and the like is, you know, is the clapping and the disruptions and the different pieces like that. It's a general counsel position that I support. But I do like acknowledging support for those that are speaking. So I'm advocating for the snaps. I think that's a great way to, you know, express your approval for, you know, whatever comment that may be made. And so I just like to ask, can everybody snap if you're for soda? Are you here for soda? Okay, how about, are you here for soap? Can you snap? And I think one thing that we can bring everybody together, are we all for public safety and creating a safe city for all residents? I think that's something that we can come together. And I'd like to acknowledge the lady out there that was doing Councilmember Strauss's jazz hands. So thank you for that. Jazz hands is acceptable as well. You know, and I bring this up because, you know, we don't see this in Congress. We don't see this in state legislatures. And I don't think King County Council really sees it as well. And I just think you know, we need to be having this dialogue and hearing from everyone, to include the presenters that we have. So to close, I just want to thank you again for giving public comment, for just, even if you don't stand up, just for being here. I think it's really important. And so welcome to all of you, and also welcome to our guests, speakers, presenters on the issues that we are covering today. So with that, we will now open the hybrid public comment period. Public comment should relate to items on today's agenda. I think we have enough on today's agenda that we can comment about, or within the purview of the committee. Clerk, how many speakers are signed up for today?
Well, we have 60 and counting in-person speakers and 53 online as the last count goes. So,
Okay. Each speaker will have 1 minute. At some point, based on time restraints, we may have to cut it off, but we're going to look to get as many, if not all, public commenters in. So please start with the in-person speakers. Let's go at 10 at a shot.
Yeah.
10 at a time. And when you hear your name, please kind of line up and to facilitate, the movement of all the speakers. Over to you, Clerk.
the public comment period will be moderated in the following manner. The public comment period is up to 90 or so minutes. Speakers will be called in which order in which they registered. Speakers will alternate between sets of 10 in-person and remote speakers until public comment period has ended. Speakers will hear a chime when 10 seconds are left of their time. Speakers' mics will be muted if they do not end their comments within the allotted time to allow us to call on the next speaker. The public comment period is now open, and we'll begin with the first speaker on the list. The first in-person speaker is Alex Zimmerman, followed by Emmy Koyama and Aaron Gardner.
Thank you very much.
Здравствуйте. Добрый день.
Yeah. Where is my time?
There you go.
Oh, here, 1 minute. Yeah, I love this. Zig Heil, my lovely consul, a Nazi Gestapo psychopath. Yeah. Yeah, you are a psychopath. My name Alex Zimmerman. Yeah, you have a brilliant idea. I know you're very smart. You know what this means. You want to stop prostitution, you know what it means. Never happened before for 5,000 years, what as I know. But you are smart. You are brilliant. So my proposition, you know what it means. Masturbation is much better than prostitute. Safety. So we need something doing good for people and good for government. So you cannot masturbate for 1 minute, but it's not a point. So my proposition, so when you masturbate, bring your sperm to government and pay $10 for this. You know what this means? You will win, government will win, people will be safety, and everybody will be happy. Idiot supposed to be happy in exactly 750,000. Thank you very much.
Спасибо.
Next up, we have Emmy Koyama, followed by Aaron Gardner, and then Sarah Liebner.
Hi, my name is Emmy Koyama, and I'm the Coalition for Rights and Safety for People in the Sex Trade, and also with Eileen, the peer-led community organizing hospitality space by and for women who are working along the Pacific Highway in South King County, where our peer outreach workers have been subjected to political and police harassment under the guise of enforcing prostitution loitering laws. Over the last couple of months, we have spoken with each of you or your staff about our concerns about those bills that's now being considered. Prostitution loitering law and SOAP orders promote racial and gender profiling against women of color and trans women, whether or not they're actually involved in the sex trade. It further marginalizes people who engage in sex trade, endanger them from isolation and displacement, and exclude them from outreach and drop-in services that their lives depend on. I asked the council to fund services for the women, the community-based outreach workers who can help them, women access them. Then stop trying to make the police take on a task they're not equipped for. And please stop blaming gun violence and other violent crimes on the people who are not perpetrating it and who are not in any way responsible for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Aaron Gardner, followed by Sarah Liebner. Please come line up.
Good morning.
Good morning. I live in the proposed SOAP district, and I've been directly impacted by the dramatic spike in gun violence over the last year along Aurora. However, I'm here because I'm involved in advocacy work for sex trafficking survivors, and I want to address some of the misconceptions that I've been seeing online about this issue. First of all, I agree that women should be able to work and support themselves however they see fit, but that's not what's happening here. At least 45% of women, 45% of people engaged in sex work in the Seattle area are minors. That's according to the Washington Office of the Superintendent, which acknowledges that the number is likely much higher, but it's very difficult to track. The average age of someone when they are first sex trafficked is 13 years old. That's an average, 2013. I learned that from a nonprofit that's been working with survivors in Seattle for over a decade. And just recently, Captain Agard said that police rescued a 12-year-old girl who was being trafficked along Aurora at 90th Street. Complicating the issue is that within the last year, pimps have flooded Aurora and our surrounding neighborhoods. They circle our neighborhoods in luxury cars with out-of-state plates: California, Texas, Illinois, Oregon, and more recently, Nevada.
Thank you.
So we're not talking about independent women making their own choices here. We're talking about underage girls, largely.
Thank
And
you.
we're talking about violent armed men who are coming in from other cities and states to sell them. This is organized crime. We need immediate action. I support the SOAP
Thank you
law
very much.
to help these women separate from their pimps. Thank you for the extra time.
We have Sarah Liebner, followed by Ian Jordan, and then Amanda Robinson.
This conversation is complex, and 1 minute isn't enough. I live in the proposed SOAP zone. Over the past year, our neighborhood has become a violent playground for pimps profiting off of women's and young girls' bodies. Too many bullets have come within inches of hitting neighbors, and too many bullets have hit trafficked girls. Anyone living in our neighborhood can see things can't continue this way. The city should be doing everything possible to apprehend pimps as they pose a threat to everyone. Trafficked girls do not need more trauma from cops. This law should focus on pimps. Right now on Aurora, pimps are running the show with reckless abandon, and the city is letting it happen. We have to prioritize disrupting their violent enterprise and making the street safer for all. Close off traffic from Aurora into the neighborhoods and make sure pimps know they are not welcome there. Keep them away from vulnerable girls, both on the street and in homes nearby.
Thank you.
Next up, Ian Jordan, followed by Amanda Robinson and Andrew Steele-Smith.
My name's Ian Jordan. I also live in this proposed SOAP zone. Most of you have probably seen the videos of the shootings on the news. Those are all in front of my home. These pimps are fighting over turf, and it's just a matter of time before someone is killed. Unfortunately, those that have been hit have been sex workers. I no longer have friends or family come to my home. Hypervigilance is now my norm. I work in the ICU taking care of critically ill patients, and that is now my safe spot. After 3 shootings on my block in less than 12 days, the city finally took some action and put in barriers to block the running gun battles that occur more than once a week just down my street. The street closure has been incredibly transformative, but it's only one facet. We need to focus on public safety, and we need to make protecting the lives of not only the residents, but the girls forced to work on Aurora from this violence. It's time to make a change because the current situation is not working for anyone. Those that don't live there and live where I do don't understand what we go through on a daily basis. Thank you.
Amanda Robinson, followed by Andrew Steele-Smith. There are multiple microphones you can line up at also. Amanda Robinson, there we are, hi.
Hello, my name is Amanda. My pronouns are any and all, and I live directly off of Aurora. I just want to share some personal experiences that I've had living there. When I come home, I have to make sure my keys are out. I have to have my pepper spray. I have to have a knife. I have to make sure that I don't turn on my lights right when I go inside. If there's a pimp parked in my parking, I can't park. I've been followed. I've been held at gunpoint. Somebody tried to stab me. I've been spit on. I've had shit thrown on me. I cannot tell you how stressful my life at home is. I don't sleep. I hardly eat anymore. I go to work at an ICU, and that's my best night. I worked 12 hours and came to this meeting because it was so important to me to say my personal experiences and how absolutely unbelievably horrible our living situation is. Constantly ready for any bullet to fly through our house and hit me, my husband, my neighbors, anyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your service as a nurse and the speaker before. Thank you.
Andrew Steele-Smith, followed by Trey Sullivan. Please come up and be ready. Michael McDaniel will be next.
Hi, I made a YouTube video about the insanity in our neighborhood last year. If I could talk to myself a year ago, I'd say, oh, sweet summer child, you just wait. Back then, it was mostly independent sex workers that used to be online, bringing Johns into our neighborhood to service them. That's not the case anymore. Here are just a few things that have happened since. A neighbor discovered a 15-year-old hiding from her pimp in the garden of her complex. She brought her in and got her in a safe house. A few months later, she honked at a group of prostitutes blocking her apartment garage. They followed her and dragged her out of her car. Together with their pimp, they beat her with their own cane. This is on 107th. I was driving home late February and watched two pimps block both lanes of southbound Aurora, get out and approach a girl that looked 17 years old. I watched from the turning lane as he pulled her hips towards him from behind as she walked in circles trying to get away. What I saw next made me sick. This girl saw me thinking I was the police and walked straight at me onto Aurora. You can see her hopeful look change when she realized it was just me. He walked up behind her and yanked her backwards by her hair towards his car. I never saw her again, and he's still pimping. If you stand on Aurora, you need a pimp. If you need a pimp, you aren't a sex worker, you're a victim. Until this law is signed, the Johns turning into our streets and the pimps shooting up our neighborhood are untouchable. The victims are unreachable. If these laws are implemented half-assed, without the funding needed for beds and services, and without enforcing the laws that will put these felons in jail, I will be protesting with all of you. Until then, let Kathy Moore do what we've been begging her to do for months. Get us out of this nightmare.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, when you hear that ding, that's 10 seconds remaining. And again, we have a lot of speakers, so we try to keep this right to the minute. Next.
Trey Sullivan, followed by Michael McDaniel. You can use multiple microphones, and if that's better height for you, go ahead.
Perfect, thank you. Hey, so over the last 3 years or so, it has become rampant up in my neighborhood for the soap zone. We've had multiple violent attacks. We've had neighbors attacked. We've had shots come through our house. We have seen girls get shot at that were working the street. Most of these girls are minors too. So coming at this, there is a big issue going on that needs to be taken action against because there's nothing we can really do. We're told, no, we can't get help from the cops because the old law was repealed. We're told we're just kind of stuck with this until something happens. If we don't have accountability and something is left lawless by the state, or it's illegal by the state, but lawless in the city, there's no things to moderate it, and it's become super dangerous.
Thank you.
Michael McDaniel, followed by Jan Bryan, sorry.
Hello. Oh boy, that timer is really intimidating. Just want to say, I'll start with, I moved into the neighborhood to build community just a year and a half ago. The neighbors are awesome. I know there's always been problems on Aurora, but from everyone I've talked to who's been here, even 10, 20, or 30 years, last few years have gotten a lot worse. I'm not a pro-gun kind of person, and thanks to living in this neighborhood, I can tell you the difference in sound between like a bump stock and a semi-automatic weapon, because there were, especially this 2 or 3 month period a while back, where there were multiple gunshots within a few blocks of our house, waking us up at night. I've lost. The other thing I want to mention is my mom did sex work when I was in high school briefly, and that was a hell of a lot better than being put out on the street. I really don't want a law that's going after them, but I also need a law to stop the gun violence and prevent all the new neighbors and people that I'm making from leaving. I'm trying to put down roots, and they keep getting ripped up.
Thank you.
We have Jan Bryan, and then we'll go to remote speakers. BJ last will be first for remote.
Hi. Not long ago, on a typically cold, wet, rainy, dark Seattle night, I went up to the Lowe's to get some home improvement stuff. As I was checking out, a couple of girls walked in through the exit door. They didn't look much older than 20, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were younger. They weren't wearing much, and they looked cold. One of them looked like she'd been crying. Her hair was wet, her cheeks were flushed red, her makeup was a mess. I wondered if she just had a violent encounter with a pimp or maybe a John. She looked sick, maybe high, totally miserable. The other girl asked the Lowe's attendant where the bathroom was. He pointed in that direction, and they hurried away. I think about those girls a lot. I wonder if either one of them are the girls I habitually and intentionally ignore when I drive past them on Aurora Avenue. I wonder if they're still alive. I wonder if there was anything I could have said or done to help. That night I asked myself that question, what can I do? I had no answer, I did nothing. I failed those girls that night, just like I fail every victim of sex trafficking when I intentionally and habitually ignore them. Looking away doesn't ignore their humanity, it denies it. It denies the fact that it denies the violence done to them by the pimps and johns. It denies the fact that human slavery exists in my neighborhood. We call it trafficking, but I know that we're talking about men buying girls from other men.
Thank
It has
you.
to stop, and I know that we can, as a city, can do better. I think this bill moves in the right direction. I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to remote speakers. BJ Last will be our first, followed by Peter Condit. Please press *6 when you hear the prompt. You've been unmuted.
My name is DJ Last. I'm a D6 homeowner, and I'm calling on council to reject soda and soap. The proposed soda zones are not anticipated to reduce public drug use. That's a direct quote from the central staff memo on soda. The soap memo says the same thing. I can see why council members kept trying to get the memos changed. What these zones would do is they'd punish people who haven't been convicted of anything. Because everything people have been talking about, shooting, assaults, like that's illegal. Prostitution, it's all already illegal. That's all there. What this does, this lets the judge create a brand new crime of someone that's been arrested, and before any conviction, just create a brand new crime. We know this will be disproportionately applied. Research shows judges impose harsher penalties on BIPOC community members when they have discretion, which these bills provide. And soda and soap also turn certain areas of the city into stop and frisk. SPD stops Black community members at 7 times the rate of white community members, and the Indigenous community members at 9 times the rate of white community members. These zones amount to attempts to banish BIPOC community members from certain parts of the city, given how disproportionate the impacts are. People will know if they go into an area and they're not white, they're going to get stopped by cops. They're going to get harassed by cops because that's what this allows, and it allows the courts and the city just to banish people.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter Condit.
Hello, this is Peter Condit calling from Northwest Green Lake near Aurora to voice my opposition to the drug and prostitution exclusion zone legislation. These bills create no resources for people experiencing violence to get help. Banning community members from where they live and work is destabilizing and increases the risks associated with sex work and drug use. The SOAP legislation in particular would directly impact me and my family as we live our lives along Aurora. Police are often abusers themselves, and giving cops discretionary power to approach suspected sex workers will increase the likelihood of police violence and rape. I do not want SPD officers to gaze at my daughter to try to figure out if they could pay her for sex. I do not want police to be able to use the threat of arrest to coerce any woman into doing something they would not otherwise do. The soap and soda legislation undermines everyone's safety and ability to build a better life. Council members Moore and Kettle and all people speaking in support of these bills, shame on you for your lack of compassion and your attempt to use these bills to simply punt people you see as undesirable to other neighborhoods.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kit Paul, followed by Gabriel Newman.
Hi, my name is Kit, and I am calling to ask you to vote no on the proposed soap and soda bills. I live in District 5, directly in that proposed soap zone on Aurora. And like many of my neighbors, I am concerned about the increase in violence in my area. But loitering laws like this one have been shown to do nothing to help with reducing gun violence, and that's backed by research done by Seattle itself. This city has limited resources, and we should be using them to help people, not harm them. If someone is arrested under this proposed law, they'd be prevented from accessing resources at places like the Aurora Commons, which is my neighbor, blocked from transit, or even kept from their homes before going to trial. That is not the kind of bill proposal I want to see from my city council, much less the council member who represents my district. Again, I am asking you to vote no on this proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going now to Gabriel Newman, followed by Josh Martinez. Gabriel, please press *6. Okay, we're going to skip over to Josh Martinez and come back to Gabriel if he's ready. Oh, Gabriel, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. Good morning, City of Seattle. My name is Gabriel Newman, and I'm the Policy Counsel and Government Relations Manager at GSBA, Washington's LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce. I'm testifying today to urge you to not implement the proposed soda zones. Our members spanning citywide that the unintended impacts of soda will cause more harm than good. People banned from soda zones downtown will move into nearby economic areas like Capitol Hill. This will exacerbate the citywide public safety crisis because these areas are much less resourced than downtown. Capitol does not have a community service officer, our care team is yet to be implemented, and the East Precinct has been clear they do not have the personnel to carry out the additional patrols business owners have already been requesting for years. As a result, untrained employees like baristas have become the frontline responders to behavioral health crises. Businesses are consistently shutting down. This neighborhood and others nearby are simply not resourced to accommodate the inevitable open crime that soda zones will create. Seattle is an ecosystem, not just a downtown corridor. If one area suffers, the whole city does. Please ensure that our city is fully resourced.
Next up, we have Josh Martinez to be followed by Kai Baden-Waden. Sorry about the pronunciations. Josh, go ahead.
My name is Josh Martinez. I'm a small business owner in District 2. Council members, I know that cruelty is not what you want. I know the residents in your districts aren't asking you for that. The bills that Council members Moore and Cattle are proposing today are cruel. They won't solve the shootouts in the area or the cases of human trafficking that we've heard today. If these laws have any effect, it'll be that they go after people who don't deserve it. The council repealed the prostitution and loitering laws in 2020 because they learned about the harms they cause. The public testimony today, articles, and experts reports are saying that these laws will hurt the people you claim you want to protect. Police officers committed solicitation and sexual abuse under those laws. Stay-out zones won't deter people who are gunfighting. These laws will only harass and endanger whoever the police decide to target. I know you want Seattle residents to think you are tough on crime, but the laws you're proposing will not stop crime or help anyone. These rules will make it harder for Seattleites trying to live. Let's find other ways to care for people in your district because these aren't it. Please vote no today.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to Kai Baden-Waden next. Please press *6.
Hello, my name is Kai Bagwanden. I live in District 5. I am a healthcare worker, and I am asking the council to vote no on the loitering, prostitution, soap, and soda bills. We know because of research and data that these are discriminatory laws. We know that, and that's why it was repealed in the first place. These issues in our district are important, but criminalizing and punishing the most vulnerable population is not the answer to this. And the fact that this is even coming up makes me really concerned that the city council is not proposing bills that are based on research and data. This is extremely irresponsible for our community members, and I urge you to please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jasmine Clark to be followed by Annalise Mellon.
Please press
Jasmine, yeah, please press *6. There you go.
Good morning. My name is Jasmine Clark. I'm a Policy Program Director at the ACLU of Washington. I'm calling in today in addition to our letter sent to the City Attorney and Council members last week to express our opposition to all of these proposals. These proposals not only cruelly target our most vulnerable populations, expand police powers, perpetuate the failed policies of criminalizing poverty and substance use disorder, and raise serious constitutional concerns. Laws such as these result in discretionary and discriminatory enforcement. These proposals lack support services or alternatives to arrest and disproportionately target poor women of color and trans women, furthering systemic inequalities. Research consistently shows that exclusion zones like soda and soap zones are ineffective in achieving their intended goals and ultimately stigmatize individuals struggling with substance use disorder or engaging in sex work. Importantly, the Seattle City Auditor recently outlined recommendations and emphasized evidence-based strategies rather than creating exclusionary zones. These proposals offer Seattle residents more of the same failed public safety policies of the past and do not solve the problem of addiction, houselessness, and engaging in sex work for survival. Instead, the city should invest in collaborative efforts among agencies, community organizations, and residents to develop programs that uplift our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Annalise Mellon. To be followed by Marshall Bender.
Good morning. My name is Annalise, and I'm a sex worker living in District 7. In a state and city where a former city council member murdered a sex worker, I find the proposal of the SOAP bill particularly abhorrent and insidious. I strongly oppose the SOAP bill proposed by Kathy Moore of District 5. As a former judge, Kathy should know that this bill is unconstitutional, violating the due process clause of the 14th Amendment by imposing punitive measures without fair procedures. Laws targeting sex work have historically marginalized people of color, LGBTQIA+ individuals, and those living in poverty. These laws perpetuate cycles of criminalization and marginalization similar to the harmful effects of redlining practices that have oppressed minority communities for decades. By enforcing such laws, we further entrench these communities in systemic inequality and injustice. This draconian bill seeks to further strip women's rights away and aligns with the repressive goals of Project 2025. We need to protect and empower sex workers, not criminalize and marginalize them. We are not trafficked, helpless individuals carrying out violent crimes. We are taxpayers, we are business owners, we are voters, we are students.
Thank you. We're going now to Marshall Bender, then Tyson Feaster, to be followed by back into in-person speakers. Let's see, Marshall. Marshall, please press *6.
Okay, hello. My name is Marshall Bender, and I'm a resident of District 5 living in Northgate. Calling today to oppose soda and soap laws proposed in this committee. Councilmember Moore's soap law is an attempt to revise short-sighted, discriminatory, foolish, and waste of taxpayer dollars and police sources loitering law. Why? Because the law is insane. It's nonsensical, regressive, and so vague that it led to extremely biased enforcement of prostitution loitering laws. And in 2020, as many people have already said, the City Council unanimously voted to repeal this law because of these facts. And now you all want to bring it back. Why? Did the police union talk you into this so they can coerce sex workers without punishment? Because they've been doing that, and they're going to do it again with this law. The premise of this law is basically that cops should be able to arrest and charge people for simply looking like they might be a prostitute. What about due process? Why are you advocating to take away people's freedom of movement and to ban them from entire neighborhoods as a condition of pretrial release or after a conviction? This is not just a threat to these people, but to all people in Seattle, as it directly attacks our civil liberties. It is an attack on our right to exist in public space. It isn't just anti-sex worker, it's anti-human. Vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to Tyson Feaster for our last remote commenter for this set. We'll go to Rick Fordyce in person. Please get ready for that. Tyson, go ahead.
Hello. This is Tyson Feaster from District 6. I'm in support of soap and soda legislation. I think the city needs as many tools as possible to get drug users and dealers off the street, as well as pimps and johns. I appreciate this legislation being put forward and hope everybody votes yes. Thank you.
I'm Rick. I grew up in North Seattle. John Rogers, Jane Addams, Nathan Hale. I happily walked to all of them. The last 19 years, I've lived in this soap zone and watched it go from nothing to what it is now. And one story has always stood out. 3 years ago, there was a heat dome in 2021, a heat dome. They warned about it. The temperature hit 108 degrees. Everybody was isolated, and I had to go somewhere. I got in the car, I drove out. Down at Aurora was this young woman standing out there, barely able to stand up. Across the street was her pimp in an air-conditioned car. I was raised a feminist in this city, and so I wondered, where are the women in this city? How come they're not surrounding this guy's car with baseball bats or something? So it has only gotten worse, and you need to do something.
Thank you.
Next up, in person will be Tina Virilli, followed by Diane Sidari.
Hello, I live in the proposed soap zone, which has been at the epicenter of gun violence on Aurora this year. Imagine moving to a new neighborhood only to find yourself fearing for your life, worried that one day you will be caught in the crossfire. Why should people in Shoreline get to sleep quietly at night with their soap legislation when people along the Aurora corridor must experience gun violence and witness sex trafficking every day? This law targets the violent pimps whose gun fights and turf wars have spilled into our neighborhoods along Aurora. It also targets the men who prowl into our neighborhoods at night, looking for girls and women who are being sex trafficked. Pass this law now so that we can have some relief. Thank you.
Next up, Diane Sidari, to be followed by Megan Cruz.
Hi, I live off of Aurora and 105th, and I share the perspective of many of the individuals in my neighborhood. We want the shootings to stop. We want the violence to stop. I just want to give you a little bit of perspective of our experience as families in our community. So our kids have a bus stop 2 blocks from Aurora. Every morning we have to make sure the kids stand to one side of the street because the other side of the street is where the Johns park all night long. That's where there's condoms, there's human waste, there are Listerine bottles, there are bottles of liquor, there are wipes. So we have to make sure that the kids are always on the other side. On the way home from school, unfortunately, the kids have started to play a game. They recognize the girls are standing on the corners with no clothes on. So we have, 5 to 11-year-olds who come home after playing this game of what are the girls wearing today? Right? And so that's kind of dehumanizing those girls as well, right? And I don't want my kids to be learning that. Lastly, I just want to say there are several girls that have turned 11 in our neighborhood. And so we've allowed them to walk between each other's houses like we want them to do. We want them to be independent. But it really struck me when they said that the youngest girl they have found on Aurora as of date was 12. Put that in perspective. That's a 6th grader.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan Cruz, to be followed by Carol Jo Williams.
Good morning. I'm Megan Cruz, a resident in the downtown Pike Pine corridor, ground zero for a 24/7 drug market. Whatever we're doing to try to turn this around isn't working. The situation has never been worse for people trapped and dying from drugs on our streets and for those of us whose homes and businesses are in the center of it. There is no one solution. It's going to take multiple answers. One is we deliver care, a 7-day-a-week outreach program for people at risk on the street. They desperately need more permanent supportive housing to make a difference. At the same time, we do need tools like SODA to disrupt the status quo and provide consequences that don't currently exist, especially for dealers and fencing operations that have no incentive to leave the area. This isn't an either-or choice, it's choose all. Whatever social service or legal measures we do use, they require oversight, clear metrics, and accountability to show that they work, or we'll continue spending money and losing ground. Please help us move forward with multiple options for safety. Thanks.
Thank you.
Carol Jo Williams, to be followed by Heidi Wilson and then Fiona Wilson.
Hello, I'm CJ Williams, and a 38-year downtown Pike Pine Union resident, 32 years as an owner, 6 years as a renter. I'm a senior without a car, so the bus transportation on 3rd Avenue is almost used daily. I'm also a daily morning walker for the last 24 years with a group of ladies, better known as the Thursday Walkers, who have experienced daily stolen goods for sale, defecation, urination on the sidewalks, walking on the streets, drugs, monies exchanged, and addicted poor souls dying on the street in front of us. We support SODA as the first step to curb the activity, hoping you have the next stopping their activities 1 block from your perimeters to help the victims of the drug pushers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heidi Wilson, to be followed by Fiona Wilson and Carlo Alcantara.
Hello, I have lived in the SOAP zone, proposed SOAP zone, since 2008. I'm a social worker, and that was the only neighborhood I could afford to buy a house in. Since then, I've raised 3 children in this neighborhood. I have a son who's 7, a daughter who just turned 11, and my daughter, Fiona, who just turned 14. We live just a few blocks from Aurora and 105th, okay? And I feel like I'm all for protecting women and the girls on Aurora, but I also have to think about my very vulnerable children who live in this neighborhood, who grow up hearing the gunshots, who hear screams of victims being shot, who know we have neighbors who have bullets in their fences and they babysit at those houses, who can't walk around safely walking our dog without pimps and Rolls Royces coming up and leering at us, okay? So what about our children? We need to be protecting our children, and we have to do something to try to save them. And we shouldn't be forced to have to move out of our neighborhoods in order to live safely, okay? So maybe this isn't a perfect law, but we need to do something to protect our vulnerable children.
Next.
Fiona, go ahead.
I'm Fiona Wilson. I just turned 14 recently, and the night before my 14th birthday, I heard a woman screaming as she was shot 3 blocks from my house. I hear frequent gunshots, and I see the girls, and it is so heartbreaking to think about because these are girls who could be in high school with me, who could be people that I could be friends with almost, you know, and who are not that much older than me. In a different life, I could be one of those girls, and I don't want to think about that. I don't want to imagine even a world where there are women who are being trafficked and taken from their cities, taken from broken homes, and forced to walk the streets and objectify themselves. I want people to see me as a human being and not as something that they can pay for and buy. And I want this legislation to protect me and my younger siblings and all of the people who are being victimized.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Carlo Alcantara, to be followed by Elizabeth Halendi.
My name is Carlo. I'm here representing, or on behalf, I guess, of myself, my neighbors in Licton Springs, and the Aurora Reimagine Coalition. In our homes, we're living in a state of fear and anxiety. So I'm here to advocate for what is proving to be an effective component of a multifaceted approach to prevention and deterrence of gun violence and exploitation that's currently plaguing our neighborhood. On July 17th, the city installed a Jersey barrier on North 101st, effectively changing the street that once permitted through traffic into a cul-de-sac in an effort to deter the violence. Almost 1 month later, we've seen no gun violence on 101st and have gone from 5 to 10 911 calls per night to a single call since July 17th. The very press conference that was held to announce this loitering law was held on 101st, a task that would have been impossible without the street reconfiguration. At the very same time the press conference occurred, children were seen playing on the street outside, able to play next to Aurora Avenue North for the first time ever. Closing one street is not enough, and we as a community of neighbors and businesses are pleading for more of our neighborhood and non-arterial streets to be closed to traffic to deter the violence. There's only so much space for this criminal enterprise to operate, and we're seeking to squeeze out the available space that is left. Thank you.
Elizabeth Halendi.
I'm Elizabeth from Aurora Commons. We've been on 90th and Aurora since 2011. Our mission is to cultivate community and belonging among our neighbors experiencing poverty and homelessness. Last year, we served 400 unduplicated women, many of whom are in the sex trade and victims of sex trafficking. We cannot currently keep up with the demand for services. The SOAP legislation, as written, unintentionally targets vulnerable women in the sex trade who are often victims of trafficking. It does not propose additional funding or resources or have a provision for women who may live in a SOAP zone. We urge you to lean on your subject matter experts in the field of gender-based violence to partner with you to draft amendments to this bill and not undo the last 20 years of research, progress, and advances we've made in the field of gender-based violence. Target those who are actually perpetuating the violence, not the vulnerable. With only 7 beds in the entire city where we can send women who wish to exit the sex trade, we're putting the cart before the horse with this. We need to provide pathways for health and healing first, not increase barriers and further victimize. Target the Johns, traffickers, and real perpetrators. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now going back into remote commenters. We're going to start with Eva Bagwanden. Remember to press star 6.
Hello, my name is Ava. I live in District 5. I'm asking you to vote no on Moore's prostitution loitering law. I have read and reviewed this bill in detail, and I have a degree in criminology. I also regularly shop and dine within the proposed SOAP area, usually as a pedestrian. I've seen and experienced the violence that everyone is talking about on Aurora firsthand. If you care about victims, listen to the orgs that have been working to help them. Listen to the research. This bill does not address gun violence, drug addiction, or sex trafficking. All it does is ban people that look like prostitutes and criminalize them for simply existing in the SOAP area. This bill will make violence worse, traumatize victims, and encourage pimps to move to other areas. Innocent people will be arrested and harassed. Cops will continue to harass and solicit sex workers. I've literally had it happen to me. This law does not target Johns or pimps. It's legalizing profiling. It has loose, empty promises of when we know that there are none. They also have not been funded by the city in any way. We repealed this law for a reason. Why are we going back to this failed policy when
Thank you, Eva. We're next going to Holly Willis. And then followed by Haley Spencer.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Good morning, council members. My name is Holly Willis. I'm the policy manager at the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness, and I live in District 6, 1 block off Aurora. The Coalition on Homelessness advocates for the council to develop good policies to help people who are poor and suffering from addiction and people who want to leave the sex trade. But reinstating harmful policies like soda and soap is not a good way forward. These laws will disproportionately punish people who are poor, homeless, and people of color, and it will only make it harder for people to heal and live well. We know what works to address these issues. First, people need housing, people need health care, sufficient income, and people need stability. The Coalition on Homelessness is opposed to soap and soda because banishing people will harm them. It will not improve public safety, and it will fail again as it failed before. Please raise new revenue to pay for the housing and services that will actually make a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Haley Spencer, to be followed by Tanya Moore. Haley, please press star 6. There you go. Thank you.
Hi. Anti-loitering laws are not the answer. I have a friend who is a transgender woman who used to live a block off of Aurora. During the time that she lived in that area, she was twice mistaken for a sex worker while walking for groceries in everyday clothing. She told me one of the times she was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. If we have anti-loitering laws, a police officer could see her in that situation, make an assumption, and arrest her for loitering. If that were to happen, there could be orders that prevent her from being within her own neighborhood before even having a trial, having a chance to clear up the situation. We know that in the past, these laws have been enforced in racist, transphobic, horrible profiling ways. And it is very upsetting that this is being offered to people as a solution to keep them safe, when the solution to gun violence is to ban guns. This would create really serious repercussions, even for people who are later found innocent and who have not been doing sex work or drugs in the areas.
Thank you. Next, we have Tanya Moore, to be followed by Jennifer Ives. Tanya, please press *6. Okay, we're going to jump over to Jennifer Ives. Jennifer, please press *6. There you go.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer. I'm a former Aurora resident and current resident of D3. Okay, to start with, the vast majority of trafficking is done by family and friends of victims behind closed doors, not by strangers. Sex trafficking is already illegal. Gun violence is already illegal. These laws will not protect victims or sex workers. Pimps are not the ones that will be targeted by these laws. These laws will infringe on our right to freedom of movement and to be considered innocent until proven guilty. Fund shelters, fund job programs, fund social work programs, decriminalize sex work. Fund things that empower people instead of marginalizing them. Stop fruitlessly trying to punish instead of providing alternatives. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Tanya Moore. Tanya, can you please press *6?
Hi, my name is Tanya Moore. I'm a resident of District 5, and my home at North 90th and Aurora is in the proposed SOAP district. I'm speaking against the SOAP legislation. This is a legislation that is racist, transphobic, and does nothing to stop gender-based violence. It does nothing but cut off people from housing, jobs, and services, and the ability to move through the city and get where they need to be to access services. It also does nothing for funding. I find it despicable that Councilmember Moore has not listened to the organizations that work in this area and work with these individuals. They have asked and repeatedly given comment and not been heard. If they had been, this legislation would not even have been put forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Toohey, to be followed by Julia Buck.
Hello, my name is Michael Toohey. I live in District 5. I'm here to urge City Council to vote no against the proposed SOAP bill. This bill is bringing this back into focus. It was repealed for a reason. This is an archaic bill that emulates vagrancy laws put into form during the Jim Crow era, making it illegal for Black people to be in public spaces. This transcends sex work. It transcends everything. This bill does not target me directly as a 41-year-old white male, but it does directly affect all of the people in my life. Powerful, brilliant, wonderful people, expressive, social people that being in public spaces, waving at their neighbors driving by, engaging and communicating with people on the street makes them a target for the police to be able to openly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We're going now to Julia Buck, to be followed by Heather Hurd.
Hello, my name is Julia Buck. I'm a resident of District 6. These stay out of drug and prostitution area laws didn't enhance public safety when they were in place until 2018, including the time when I lived for 2 years 1 block off of Aurora Avenue. But public safety is really just an excuse to do what you want, which is to put as many people as possible in the jail system and help a city attorney too incompetent to put together probable cause be able to lock people up without a conviction. Councilmember Moore, you claim in your newsletter that the most recent shooting on Aurora is the result of prostitution in the area. Councilmember Wu, you claim in your newsletter that the same shooting, same date, same block, was because of drag racing high schoolers. That doesn't make any sense. Those are two very different sets of activity and people. Anyway, if you'd like to do something about the quiet epidemic of cocaine overdoses here in Seattle, I'd like to propose a soda district in the Green Lake neighborhood on 1st Avenue Northeast from 53rd to 58th. But we know that white people doing expensive white people drugs doesn't make white people hysterical.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Next up, we have Heather Hurd, and then we'll be going back to in-person public commenters. Heather, go ahead. Please press *6. There you go.
Hello, my name is Heather Hurd. I live off 90th and Nesbitt near Robert Eagle Staff Middle School and Cascadia Elementary School with my kids. Right now, we can't actually walk in the neighborhood. And at the corner of 90th Nesbitt, there's frequent gun battles and an actual chainsaw fight that happened a couple of weeks ago. These assaults closed the school and put it on lockdown. Aurora Commons, most of this event actually happens within their parking lot, and they're aware of this. When I contacted the city, they said that the response from Aurora Commons was that they were finding quotes on permanent fencing for the area, as well as organizing volunteers to facilitate crossing guards to shepherd students past the problem areas. This is against the 1994 federal legislation for Violence in Drug-Free Schools Act, and Robert Eagle Staff's principal has said that students have been solicited into prostitution in the area. Someone has to start to protect our kids within this area, so please vote yes on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. First up for our next set of in-person public commenters, Ariana Riley, to be followed by Amber Bergstrom and Star M.
Morning, my name is Ariana Riley. I'm a sex worker myself. What I've heard from people living along Aurora is that they're concerned about gun violence occurring in their neighborhood. Many people relate stories of calling police for gun violence and the police refusing to come. This, to me, is a problem. We can all agree that nobody wants their home shut up. We can also all agree that prostitutes themselves are not the ones shooting up homes. I haven't seen anyone say that. Also, we can recognize that not all sex workers have pimps. Yes, even on Aurora. There's a lot of gun violence that occurs nearby to me in White Center and over in Rainier Beach by the Safeway. There's no track on 16th and there's no host roll on Rainier, yet gunfire is a common sound. The problems of police not responding to violent crimes even after receiving a large raise and gunfire occurring in areas north of White Center will again not be solved by harassing prostitutes and bans on people waving on Aurora, who everyone admits are not the ones shooting up the neighborhood. Withdraw this bill.
Thank you, Amber Bergstrom.
Hi, my name is Amber Bergstrom. I live in Kathy Moore's district, just a few blocks off of Aurora. I have been volunteering with Greenlight Project, a peer-led mutual aid organization for sex workers since 2019, doing outreach on Aurora Avenue twice a week. We have been hearing directly from them about the problems they face. I'm here begging City Council to vote no on the prostitution loitering and drug loitering proposals, soap and soda. These ordinances are going to literally get people killed. Anyone who votes in favor of them will have blood on their hands. There's safety in numbers, and street-based sex workers watch out for each other. Violence from pimps, predatory men, and police brutality will escalate if this legislation is approved. The proposed legislation does absolutely nothing to stop or prevent sex trafficking or gun violence. It will only make things worse for our participants. It is deplorable when elected officials write legislation about sex workers without asking for input from the people who will be most impacted. Nothing about us without us. Amnesty International, the World Health Organization, and sex worker advocates around the world have all issued statements that decriminalizing sex work is the best way to stop and prevent sex trafficking. Not a single anti-trafficking organization or organization offering services and support to sex workers has made a statement in favor of this proposal. Please listen to the community experts who engage with this population.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Star M, to be followed by Ellie Lectrum and Maz Fahi.
My name is Star. I am a non-binary sex worker, a human trafficking victim and survivor. I'm here today to express my rejection on the soda and soap bill. Passing these bills will do more harm than help. As an addict in recovery, access to services helped me and has helped me maintain sobriety and stay stable. There are multiple community services in the soda and soap area, so if anyone gets arrested and released, they can be banned from accessing these services such as DSC facilities, DSHS, the YWCA, which is in the proposed area. The soap bill will do more harm than good. We will have the same nightmare that we had when Backpage was shut down. Putting that bill into effect will make victims more afraid to come forward if anything happens to them. On top of that, some of my friends live in hotels in those areas in an apartment, so if they They will fear to go to the police if anything happens to them. I've had North Precinct officers sexually assault me for not taking me to jail. If you pass this bill, blood will be on your hands, Kathy Moore. And remember, no child wakes up and says they want to be a prostitute, or no child wakes up and says they want to be a homeless addict. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellie Lectrum, followed by Maz Fahey and Bailey. I'll figure that one out. Go ahead.
My name is Elle. I live and work in District 5 and also do outreach with Greenlight Project. I gave public comment here last week in opposition to the soap and soda loitering bills, but I'm now asking Councilmember Moore, directly as her constituent, to pull the soap bill from consideration entirely. Not only is it bringing back stop and frisk policy that's proven to be ineffective at crime prevention, it's also incredibly discriminatory and will make already marginalized people worse off. This bill will not prevent sex trafficking. In fact, trafficking and violence increase along with the isolation of vulnerable people, which anti-loitering laws promote. Before the repeal of the loitering law in 2020, workers would walk outside alone for fear of being arrested on charges of, ironically, trafficking. Currently, many of them walk together to protect each other against violent pimps, clients, and police officers. There has been a noticeable shift when doing outreach the past couple weeks. Our participants are terrified. They fear arrest because that could be losing access to housing, domestic violence resources, or losing custody of their children. Please do the right thing. Listen to your constituents, listen to sex workers, fund housing, social services, and domestic violence resources, not racist prostitution and drug loitering laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Maz Fahey.
Hello, my name is Maz, and I've been a sex worker for most of my adult life, and I personally know several workers who have started out as trafficked minors. No one, civilians or sex workers, wants to see people trafficked or hurt by gun violence. This bill will not fix either of those problems. When I experienced violence at the hands of Johns, or saw my peers in trouble, I had no way to get them any kind of help because doing so would put us at risk of arrest. With arrest comes permanent records. With records comes less chance of getting jobs outside of the sex industry. If you want people to stop being trafficked or stop doing sex work, you need to give those people resources. SOAP orders and profiling will create a barrier to life-saving resources and lasting change. Protect our most vulnerable. Vote no on this bill. Listen to sex workers.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Bailey Nodio next, followed by Astro Lai.
Good morning. My name is Bailey Medillo, and I'm a young renter in Seattle. I'm going to tell it straight. Soap and soda are disastrous, dangerous policy proposals that will and have done more harm than good. What we need to do as a city is put more resources in community and worker-centered services, not more guns on our street. To prosecute presence is to criminalize services and collective safety. Soap and soda open the door to continuous surveillance and criminalization, especially when we consider stigmatized profiling on queer and trans youth and youth of color. Let's ask, who is actually going to be impacted the most by this escalation in criminalization? These are not solutions, they are poorly designed band-aids for systemic issues. And when we question why young people in Seattle no longer engage in community or occupy third spaces, remember this moment as you continue to put more guns in our streets and tell young people less time in community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Astro Lai to be followed by Julia Beabout.
Good morning. I live off Aurora. I volunteer with this organization, Greenlight Project, that has been out on the track, providing food supplies and solidarity to street-based sex workers twice a week without fail for the past 5 years. The women on Aurora are not abstract concepts to us. They're our friends, they're our peers, they're us. This law doesn't do anything for them except make their lives more dangerous. I implore those of you who support this bill to actually read it and see what it does, which is arrest the victims that you seem to want to protect, and actually talk to people who are in these communities and see what they have to say, because we have a lot to say. So please listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia Beabout next, to be followed by Pat Soltis.
As a resident of 3rd Avenue between Pike and Pine, my neighbors and I have a front row seat to the ongoing fentanyl epidemic. While most people talk about downtown in pre- and post-COVID terms, we talk about it in pre- and post-fentanyl terms. Recently, I found myself longing for the good old days of organic opioids. The problems we faced then seem quaint by comparison. We need multiple tools to address the new and incredibly complex problem that is fentanyl. We ask you to continue to expand the funding for the co-lead teams like We Deliver Care, who provide critical, life-giving care to our most vulnerable residents, as well as expand housing and mental health services and access to them. But we also need to give our police officers new tools. By some accounts, gangs are now pressing our addicted neighbors into service as dealers and distributors themselves and forbidding them from seeking housing and life-changing services under threats of violence. It's essential that we interrupt this arrest, release, and return cycle with legislation like the SODA.
Thank you.
Pat Soltis, to be followed by, I'll figure that one out. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I have lived in Greenwood, 1 block off of Aurora, near 100th since 1986. I used to ride the bus on Aurora. I used to walk regularly to businesses on Aurora. That has all changed since the prostitution, drugs, homelessness, and gun violence. I feel I would be putting my life at risk, so I'm limited in where and how I go. I hear the gunfire almost nightly. In fact, June 10th at 10 p.m., automatic gunfire was occurring in front of my house as cars were racing down the street. My neighbor called to ask if I was okay, because it was in front of my house. Later, the police were walking down my street to look for bullets.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat.
I just also, Clerk, I also wanted to note that we've been having public comment for just over an hour, so we'll continue. But with the numbers, we have to look at, at which point do we continue with the agenda. Thank you.
We have Pat Rach, sorry.
Hi, yes, I'm Pat Gergovich. I've lived in Greenwood for 41 years. Seattle's not the city anymore that I've known and loved since I've been here since 1974. I avoid Aurora between 85th and 145th. It's disturbing and it's demoralizing to see the sexual exploitation. The products of these activities are discarded in public places such as our church parking lot. Friends that live close to Aurora have told me of the gunfire on their streets. And to reference a recent news story, car-to-car gunfire was likely a pimp turf war. My friends fear for their safety. Where they used to walk to nearby businesses on Aurora, they no longer do so. They now refuse to take buses on Aurora due to concerns about personal safety. I ask that the council support Councilmember Kathy Moore's legislation, and I hope that in the future there will be the emergency receiving center that you also spoke about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Dan Cumberland, and then followed by Susan Jensen.
Hi there. I'm a dad of 3 young kids, 8, 6, and 4. We live half a block off of Aurora on 101st Street. I want to share a glimpse of our neighborhood. In recent years, our block has become increasingly dangerous. It's like something out of a movie. Women stand on the corner blocking traffic day and night, often underage. Cars race up and down our street, some seeking shortcuts, many a good time. Pimps and Johns park in front of my house. Neighbors have had guns pulled on them. Others have been assaulted. Gunshots from the sex trade turf war wake us regularly. I don't even get out of bed for it anymore. In the morning, I pick up used condoms and used liquor bottles from my driveway. I walk the street to see which cars have had their windows shot out. My neighbor's car was totaled by bullet holes. When the police came to extract the bullet, they asked, which shooting might this have been from? Because it happens that often. Weeks ago, our block changed when the street was blocked from Aurora. It's a simple solution and effective. Now it's quiet, it's peaceful. My kids ride their bikes in the street. close more streets, protect our neighborhoods. We all deserve to live in a
Thank
place
you.
where we can walk our streets safely. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Jensen is next, to be followed by Shannon Perez Darby.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sue Jensen. I'm a resident of Broadview, D5. I live a few blocks from Aurora, and I've lived here a long time. I strongly support the SOTA proposal and urge you to vote yes. I've been involved in many city planning efforts to try to create better communities. It's been hard around Broadview, Bitter Lake, especially around Aurora, and our neighborhoods and our commercial sectors are really failing. We need more tools at our disposal to keep Aurora clean, safe, and viable. I believe the large increases in gun violence, traffic accidents, and pedestrian traffic injuries are really primarily attributable to the prostitution, their pimps, and abuse of alcohol and drugs. And in addition to the very real gun violence that we've heard about today, it's also creating many business failures, empty storefronts, keeps me and many others from using the D line. And raise your hand if you agree. Thank you.
Next up, Shannon Perez Darby, to be followed by Allison Jerkondi.
Hello, my name is Shannon Perez Darby. I am a survivor of gender-based violence, and I have worked in Seattle for the last 17 years supporting survivors of domestic and sexual violence. I'm testifying in opposition to the proposed prostitution, loitering, and SOAP bill. Bottom line, this legislation will hurt survivors of gender-based violence. It will criminalize people experiencing violence. I care deeply about the safety of every member of our community. Prioritizing safety for some above safety for all is not the answer. We can do better. Our anti-violence community spent years working collaboratively with the City of Seattle to overturn the previous law. While the cities across the nation have been eliminating prostitution-free zones, we are trying to implement them. We know that people facing violence, we know what they need. We need support in self-determination and safety. We need resource. We need community-based solutions. Please join me in opposing this law and supporting survivors of gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Allison Jerkondi, followed by Cynthia Marin.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Could we have respect in our audience, which side people are trying to speak, and we have people talking in the audience while we're trying to listen to public comment. Someone just asked that if we could just have respect in the audience, please. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Allie Jerkovich, and I'm a Seattle resident, a social worker, and an advocate for the anti-violence movement for the past 15 years. In that time, I worked with survivors of gender-based violence and folks in the sex trades. I am also currently the board co-chair of the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence. The coalition recently sent a letter to the Seattle City Council, Mayor Harrell, and the City Attorney Davison opposing this legislation. This letter represents over 50 organizations and individuals, and the response from our community is clear. Not only will the soap and soda zones not keep our communities safer, but they will limit and compromise critical pathways to safety and stability for the individuals that everyone here has been expressing concern for. Providers and community members advocating for sex workers and human trafficking survivors don't always agree on how to best support individuals, but we do agree on this. We cannot arrest our way out of social problems. I've heard passionate concern for youth in the sex trades today, and I'm here to tell you that creating conditions for their criminalization is not the solution. I encourage the City Council to reconsider this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. You know, standard public comment is 20 minutes for standard committee meetings. We're at 1 hour and 20 minutes approximately. So if there's no objection from my fellow committee members, we'll extend public comment for another 15 minutes.
My name is Cynthia Marin. I represent the Thursday Walkers Group, who I would like all to...
Please speak into the mic, please.
I represent your grandmother, who lives downtown a quarter of a block from Pike. We are victims in our own neighborhood. We are full of rage that our grandchildren have to attempt to walk in a street of drug dealers and fentanyl clients in order to take a bus on 3rd. Which one of you can tell me the words to tell the tourist family who is shocked by what they see as they are offered stolen things as they walk to the market. This is their visual memory of Seattle. We, your grandparents, deserve to be protected. The elderly in the city no longer can care about saving others. We are busy trying to protect ourselves. We need luck each day, every time we go to Walgreens, bus, or the light rail. But luck is not a public safety strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank
I'm
you.
voting, please, to vote for it.
Thank you.
Next up is Carol Farr, to be followed by Amarinthia Torres.
You said?
Carol Farr.
Give a couple extra names too. Announce the next two.
Yeah. Next up would be Amarinthia Torres, and then Dion. Carol first, sorry. Anybody, Carol?
Okay, move on from.
All right, Amarinthia, please. Next, and then Dion will be next.
Good morning, council members. My name is Amarinthia Torres, and I'm the co-executive director of the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence. Our coalition is made up of over 35 community-based organizations who support survivors of sexual assault, trafficking, and domestic violence. I'm speaking today to share concerns in opposition to the loitering law and SOAP bill. The gender-based violence field, through its support of victims and survivors, and from being a movement of survivors ourselves, deeply understands the ways violence is used to control, coerce, and exploit another person. We are not naive or cavalier about the harm of gender-based violence and the impact on communities, and we see the challenges and concerns that everyone here is speaking to. But we believe that gender-based violence deserves solutions commensurate with the complexity of this issue. This bill is a quick fix that won't actually solve anything. Survivors deserve better than this. They deserve robust services to reach out to. Providers deserve better than this. We deserve robust funding to better meet the needs of victims and survivors. We all deserve policies that will help solve the problems, not just short-term fixes. We urge you to drop this bill and really work with us, lean on our expertise, help us be part of the solution so that we can actually solve these problems together.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next is Dion, to be followed by Franklin Gnierman.
Hello,
Greenman.
everyone. My name is Dian Dian. I live in our neighborhood and work in the ID, so both soap and soda bills are very important to me personally. I will vote no to both because I hope the taxes I pay are used for diverse development of the community, to offering resources and social services rather than simply victimizing, criminalizing, and evicting poor people of color. I also worked for the Massage Parlor Outreach Project, a group supporting Asian immigrant massage workers in the Great Seattle area for years. These workers we've long worked with share similar experience with sex workers who will be impacted by the SOAP bill. Yes, we are all anti-violence, but how can we do that with more guns and violence? I heard Asian male friend was arrested just because he got lost around a supermarket. SOAP bill in reality targets people of color and scapegoats the very group it claims to protect, subjecting them to police violence and evicting under the guise of rescue.
Thank
Similarly,
you.
soda bill will also do that. So I personally believe that won't be the solution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Franklin Greenman, to be followed by Katie Hurley.
I think the bill is kind of misplaced. First of all, I think you all know you're going to get a legal challenge. You're going to spend money defending this thing, and you may not be able to defend it. Second of all, you're going after the wrong product. You're going after the wrong target. What we need, you have to remember that both these crimes, drugs in 3rd Street and prostitution on Aurora Avenue, have sophisticated economic incentives around them. And those people who have those economic incentives are the ones we should be going after. The drug distributor, the Johns, those things are illegal. And it doesn't cost you any extra funds to have your police directed at those that are economically incentivizing prostitution and drug use. And no matter where you put it, it's going to move. If you push it out of one area, there's so much money to be made, it'll go where the people are. So go after the right targets and don't waste time with a bad bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Hurley, to be followed by Gordon Hill.
My name is Katie Hurley. I'm Special Counsel for Criminal Practice and Policy at the King County Department of Public Defense. And I'm here today to oppose the proposed revival of stay out of area of drug orders. As someone who's represented indigent clients for years, this law is not going to help anyone except to allow the downtown shoppers and retailers to avoid the suffering in our community. The city's prosecutor claims that this legislation is an exit ramp for people in the throes of addiction. In reality, this so-called exit ramp is a bridge to nowhere except continued homelessness and lack of support. If enacted, this law will either subject people to a harmful conviction and up to a year in jail for innocent behavior, walking down the street. Instead of suffering outside of Nordstrom, people will be suffering outside the downtown library. Enacting this law will be costly. You'll be spending money for police to arrest people who are engaging in innocent behavior, prosecutors, defense attorneys. This money should be spent for treatment and housing. I urge you to vote no on this wasteful, harmful, and ineffective effort to banish our community members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gordon Hill, to be followed by Ben Pligman. Sorry.
Morning, council members. I'm Gordon Hill. I'm the Deputy Director of the King County Department of Public Defense, and I'm here to oppose Council Bill 120836, the SOAP ordinance. We know that this ordinance will fail. It's failed before. It's failed across the nation. Studies show it fails. We know that this ordinance will make lives for those engaged in sex work more dangerous. It'll push them into the shadows. It'll make them more likely to become the victims of the violence of customers, of pimps, of the trade that they work in. When we came here this morning, Councilmember Kettle had a snap for public safety. What we seem to have forgotten is that those who engaged in the sex trade are a member of our community, and their safety should be important to us. We should listen to what they need. They need treatment. They need emergency shelter. They need supportive services. They need affordable housing. They need economic support. They are part of this community. By turning them into something to be chased from our streets does not solve a problem, it worsens a problem.
Thank you.
Ben, followed by Colin Madden.
Hi, my name is Ben. I am a retail manager at a high-end fashion store. It's nestled between 2nd and 3rd Avenue on Pine Street. So I am intimately familiar with the problems we're facing there. I see it every day. I have to deal with the people in the street. I understand why people are upset, but that doesn't change the fact that soda is ineffective. It's been proven to not help the situation. It targets the most vulnerable people. I can't understand how it could even be considered at this point, as been pointed out by people more eloquent and well-researched than me. We're just putting people in prison. It's not a permanent solution. I'm also concerned because the things that I've seen that do work, like community programs such as We Deliver Care, the WDC, are facing having their funding cut this October. They already don't have the resources they need to do their job. I think we need to pivot off of these proven failed policies and go to things that actually work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colin Madden, to be followed by Eric Nicholson.
Hi there, my name is Colin Madden. I live in D7, born and raised here. Seattle is not the city that I grew up in kind of all the worst ways. I'm a property manager in downtown Seattle. One of the properties we manage is a hotel that's teetering on bankruptcy as a result of criminality in the neighborhood. I wanted to just say, I know you're hearing from a vocal minority here today. I think I speak for the vast majority of Seattle residents that are in favor of soda and soap and other similar anti-vagrancy and anti-loitering laws. Thank you.
Eric Nicholson, and to be followed by Kristen O'Donnell.
Hello, my name is Eric. I'm a property manager here in Seattle. I manage a property down on Pike Pine, also in the 3rd Street area. I'm here to express my strong support for the soda legislation. In the neighborhood, particularly on 3rd Avenue, it's been drastically impacted by the rampant drug use. It has made the area unsafe and challenging to manage. And we're constantly dealing with people breaking into our building, tenant spaces, tenant leaving, starting fires in the alleyway and also in our basement. We struggled with leasing of the spaces. All of our tenants have left due to constant drug activity. Additionally, our vendors are hesitant to come down to the property because they are afraid to step on a needle. They're afraid to deal with the drug issues. And last but not least, I had a contractor who died from complications after stepping on a needle around our building. The solar legislation is a crucial step towards reclaiming these troubled areas. By targeting drug activity directly, it'll help make our streets safer and more welcoming for residents and businesses alike. Now, it's time for Seattle to act. We all witness the visible impact of drug use daily, discard needles, the suffering of individuals for fentanyl use, heroin use, and the solar legislation represents a critical step towards addressing these issues and transforming 3rd Avenue, Pike, Pine into a cleaner, safer, and more inviting area. It is an opportunity to restore the vitality of our neighborhood.
We have Kristen O'Donnell to be followed by Peter Orr.
All right. I'm representing Kristen O'Donnell, and I'm representing the leadership team of the Yesler Terrace Community Council. We're going to talk about the soda area. Well, the soap area too. It didn't work. It doesn't stop it, it moves it. And 20 years ago, it moved it right into our neighborhood. We were for 2 years, surrounded by soap areas. It was not nice. We were down at City Council a bunch. And we are absolutely, this shouldn't pass, but if it does, we're absolutely horrified that the north boundary of the International District Soda is just a quarter of a block into our neighborhood. The north boundary needs to move north to at least Jefferson if you're going to do this, and I hope to heck you don't, because we're probably the next stop. We've got a bus stop, we've got an intersection, and we've even got a mini mart. Don't do this, and if you do, please move the boundary north. Thank you. It won't stop it, it'll move it.
Thank you.
Peter Orr to be followed by John Scholes.
Council members, thank you for considering the SOAP legislation with a yes vote, especially Councilmember Moore for representing me well by proposing it and collaborating with survivors. Having lived near 100th and Aurora for 14 years, I can testify that the drug and prostitution-fueled violence over turf there has never been worse. I wake weekly to gunfire and car chases. As an Airbnb host, I'm concerned for the safety of my guests and their potential for poor reviews. My clients' lives and my legitimate tax-generating business are at risk here. But more than this, I'm deeply disturbed for the safety of my 9- and 7-year-old kids. Something needs to change when they're walking to the school bus past fresh bullet brass the size of their finger, not to mention piles of condoms. Something needs to change when camping in our backyard feels unsafe, and when even the daytime sound of pneumatic construction tools in our growing neighborhood makes us think to hit the floor. Rampant leads us here, but it leads beyond violence. It subverts an egalitarian society, but by broadcasting a message that girls are a product when in fact they are priceless. We must enact and enforce consequences for renting them before it turns lethal.
Thank you.
Next up is John Scholes.
Good morning, council members. I'm John Scholes here on behalf of the Downtown Seattle Association. Seattle's on pace this year to have 1,000 shootings. In the first 6 months of this year, we've had more homicides in our city than all of 2019. In downtown Seattle, we had over 100% increase in 2023 in overdose calls to EMS. Seattle, we have a problem. And the current efforts and approaches, while they may be necessary, they're not sufficient. And I can tell you the folks who live and work and own properties downtown are well aware of the suffering. They see it every day. They deal with it. We all see it. They're well aware of the suffering, and they're well aware of the crime. The city auditor last month reported to you that the areas in our city with the highest concentration of drug use are also the areas of our city with the highest concentration of crime. The neighborhood is asking for a restraining order against this daily abuse and for you to address this suffering. Please take action.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody speaking at this public comment period. You know, as I said in the beginning, I think it's important for everybody to hear each side's voices, and I think that was accomplished today. We had a great turnout and great amount of public commenters. We had 167 total sign up. Again, I want to thank you. But also important as part of this process is to hear from the presentations, the presenters of the thing, and to you have this dialogue continue. So we'll invite now, we will now move on to our first item of business. Will the clerk please read item 1 into the record?
Council Bill 120835, an ordinance relating to stay out of drug area soda zones, creating the ability to issue written orders to criminal defendants describing conditions of their pretrial release or post-conviction conditions of sentence, creating soda zones, and providing for both the issuance of court orders relating to those zones and administration of those zones, creating the gross misdemeanor of violating a soda order, and adding a new chapter 12A.21 to the Seattle Municipal Code.
Thank you. I also wanted to note that we will have a second Public Safety Committee, as is tradition, on September 10th. And then based on that, potentially going to full council on September 17th. Thank you. I just want to put that out. Now I wanted to welcome City Attorney Davison, but also council staff member Ms. Gorman, and then also Lieutenant Mahaffey. Thank you very much for joining us. Over to you.
Good morning, council members, and thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here and to have listened to public comment and to hear from our constituents and people that are living in our city. I'm joined here today to talk about soda legislation and to be in support of Councilmember Moore for the soap legislation.
Yes, thank you. We'll get the mic. Actually, Ms. Gorman, a little introduction from central staff first. I think that's lined up for the slide deck.
I was going to send it to her.
Okay. Please send it to Ms. Gorman. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Kettle and committee members.
Mics, please.
Sorry. Good morning, Chair Kettle and committee members, Ann Gorman, Council Central staff. I have a prepared overview of the bill that will take less than 5 minutes of committee time.
Okay.
Open to questions after that, open to questions as I am reading this into the record, if anything is unclear.
Thank you.
Council Bill 120835 would establish 2 stay out of drug area zones. We call these soda zones, defining them as geographically circumscribed areas within which a high degree of illegal drug activity is taking place. These zones would be in downtown Seattle and in the International District, and other presenters will go into detail about them. The bill would also operationalize those soda zones by creating the authority for Seattle Municipal Court judges to issue soda orders. A soda order is like a restraining order from a place instead of a person, and it is very limited. You can only get a soda order from being charged with or committing a crime in a soda zone, and you can only be restrained from a soda zone. The bill would also create a new gross misdemeanor crime in the Seattle Municipal Code Criminal Code for violating a soda order. This means that someone who has received a soda order from a judge and knowingly violates it by going into the soda zone could be charged with a new crime. That charge would be in addition to any criminal charges associated with getting the soda order in the first place. Soda zones are considered a law enforcement tool. They are meant to improve public safety and public order and to help restore discrete areas where concentrated drug activity has had significant negative effects on law-abiding people and businesses. Some of these effects could be reduced foot traffic and therefore reduced revenue to a business, property damage committed by someone under the influence of drugs, or acts of violence that are inherent to the illegal drug business. The idea of soda zones is to keep people away from these specific areas who are a risk to their own safety or to other people's safety, and or who have contributed to criminality in the area. And I should emphasize, anyone kept away under this bill would be kept away only under the order of a Seattle Municipal Court judge. For someone to get a soda order under this bill, there are specific criteria that would have to be met. First, that individual would need to commit a crime or be charged with a crime within a soda zone. And that crime would have to be one of 2 things. It could be a misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor violation of the Uniform Controlled Substances Act. That is a drug crime. Or it could be, and I'm going to read specific bill language here, assault, harassment, theft, criminal trespass, property destruction, or unlawful use or possession of weapons in which the court finds a nexus between the offense and the illegal drug activity. For those non-drug related crimes, the bill would require that the judges evaluate the fact pattern and make a decision about whether the crime was drug related prior to issuing the SOTA order. The judge would have to make articulable findings, which means to provide their reasoning if they believe the crime was drug related. And it's also important to note that whether or not a SOTA order would be issued is always at a judge's discretion. The SOTA order would be in effect for up to 2 years, with its duration also at the judge's discretion. During the time that it is in effect, if it can be proven, again in Seattle Municipal Court, that the individual knowingly entered the SOTA zone, the prosecutor can charge that individual with a gross misdemeanor, as I mentioned earlier. A judge could issue a SOTA order either at the conviction phase or the charging phase when an individual is still presumed innocent of the alleged crime. But any judge doing so would be bound by existing Washington court rules, and the memo that you all have goes into some detail about that. And the bill requires that any SOTA order issued would terminate if the charge was dismissed. The memo references potential costs associated with implementing SOTA zones, but it is not possible to provide those cost estimates at this time. There are reporting requirements in the bill, which would allow for the assessment of outcomes and the monitoring of any potentially disparate enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gorman, for that summary, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate your central staff memo as well. Again, welcome to City Attorney Davison, and the blazer threw me off, not Mr. Mahaffey, but Assistant Chief Mahaffey from Seattle Police Department. Welcome to you.
Thank you, council member. I appreciate that.
Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. We on? This one. That's better. Okay, good morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Rotate over here. You got the slides? Okay. Thank you for having me. Thank you for making time for this legislation to talk about the stay out of drug area legislation. Thank you, Ann, for that summary prior to that. You can go to the next slide, please, Brent. As mentioned, the legislative intent for the stay out of drug area, in my opinion, is to be a disruption to established drug markets in our city in the 2 proposed zones that I have offered to you, council members. These orders, as Ann has stated, are available in a pretrial situation and post-conviction. These types of legislative orders are available in other municipalities in our state. They are used to disrupt known drug markets. That's why we're proposing that here for Seattle. Again, as we have talked about, the intent is to protect public places, to make our public spaces available and safer and accessible for everyone. Next slide, please. Prior to 2010, Seattle Municipal Court did issue SOTA orders. Those were done just on a case-by-case basis, not through legislation that is proposed today. Those areas were large and difficult to enforce. And today we have brought to you a carefully crafted area, 2 areas that we've proposed, making deliberate effort to exclude social services within those zones. These are, again, intended for a main impetus is to disrupt the known criminal activity in the drug market in these established areas that have just taken a hold of our neighborhoods. These are neighborhood protection measures that we are looking to make those neighborhoods safer and more accessible for everybody. And as Ann had said, these are enforceable, legally sufficient with conditions that are provided to the defendant, like all judicial orders. They are at the discretion of the judge. They must follow Court Rule 3.2, and that's the next slide. You can go into that. There is a presumption of release that is strong there for any pretrial SOTA order, so that would be done on an individual analysis under the Court Rule 3.2. Anything post-conviction is at a different standard. The drugs, the crimes that are listed here, as Ann went through, are the predicators for that SOTA order. Again, this would allow SPD the ability to lawfully contact recidivist offenders that are in these known drug markets, again, with the goal to protect our neighborhoods and protect our public places. Next slide. I want to just pause and make sure that everyone can understand why we are bringing this. We've had a legal landscape change with state law. All drug cases were at the felony level that would be handled at county prosecutor level, not the city attorney's office. So with the state law change, all of the drug cases that are now coming in are now moved downward to the misdemeanor level, which is at my level. They've not been there ever before. So the structure and the system that was built out to handle drug cases was at the felony level, including everything thereafter from any after post-referral, post-conviction, all of that is built out at the felony level. We are now we need to build that system at the misdemeanor level because of that state law legal landscape change. You could go on to the next slide. Prior to Blake, which was that pivotal case for that change, we are now needing to look at how can we be responsive again to the criminal activity that is associated with drug use in our city when that change has been from the felony level to the misdemeanor level. We have to be creative in how we provide that with the known number of limited resources we do have, both from our law enforcement partners and then with our service provider partners. This is not the end-all be-all. This is not the one solution that will make sure every neighborhood is safe, but it is necessary, again, as the state law changed from the felony to misdemeanor. This is part of the system build-out and the structure that we need, the framework that we need to be responsive to neighborhoods. This is the start of it, and we have to continue to build out it. But we need to do this first step, in my opinion. You can go on to the next one. These are the proposed 2 SOTA zone locations. Again, they are carefully crafted. They make up 1/4% of our 83 square miles of our city. That is the limitation of these 2 zones that are proposed. 1/4% of the 83 square miles. These are very distinctive areas we have focused on, again, to exclude social services, to designate the areas that we all know, we all sense when we walk through, when we observe with our own eyes, with our own ears, and we know that this is the known established drug markets of our city. These are the top 2. This is where we need to be focused to save these neighborhoods and protect those public places. You can go to the next slide. Again, these are separated out so you can see the downtown SOTA that's proposed and the international district SOTA that is proposed. In the one in downtown, it specifically excludes an area that is a highly concentrated location of social services that is purposely excluded from the boundary zone. Again, we do anticipate that this will make some disruption. That's the purpose of it. There will be some displacement, but again, it's not to stop moving. We should not go into paralysis and just think that the solution is to not do anything. This is providing additional mechanisms so that we can improve public safety. It is one part of the equation. It is not all of it, but it is certainly a necessary part, in my opinion. You can go to the next slide. Our areas are based on data. They are not just from our observations, but they are based on data. This is from our referrals that we are getting related to drug cases. And you can see by the intensity of the heat map, these are why these 2 locations are what I'm proposing to you. The SOTA zone, they're to the left, and the International District 1, they're on the right. You can see the high concentration of those referrals that we are getting, and then the associated criminal activity around that. You can go to the next slide, please. That would conclude my time. Thanks, I didn't know we were already through. And we can move on to questions. But again, I just want to emphasize, it is 1/4% of the 83 square miles. This is the least restrictive that we can do. This is not asking for in custody to have the SOTA zones. We are saying we need to be able to have a message that says we want to protect our neighborhoods, we need to make our public spaces safer, and one way is to identify and call out that this is happening in these locations. The increase in drug activity that we have heard from today and the associated crime, we are needing to be responsive for business, for residents, for workers and visitors, all of them at the same time. This is one piece of the puzzle. It won't be the complete crime prevention that everyone might want, but I still think it is important and valuable and will aid in the improvement to public safety of these areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Assistant Chief, did you have anything to add before I go to questions? I'm giving my Vice Chair a heads up because he'll get the first.
I understand. I don't have anything further at this point, though. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Vice Chair, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, City Attorney Davidson, Assistant Chief Nelson, and Ms. Gorman from Central Staff for your really insightful presentation and overview of the challenges that we're confronting and faced with today in this initial conversation. I have a few questions, I guess, with respect to the PowerPoint presentation. City Attorney Davidson, if you wouldn't mind going back to slide 2, please. That kind of overview slide that lists anything I'm saying is off or incorrect in any way, but as I understand it, these SOTA order legislation across various jurisdictions, it's specifically authorized by state law, so localities, municipalities, including Seattle, are free to adopt SOTA legislation or not, as they so choose. And so this right here in slide 2, that is a list of jurisdictions that currently have some form of SOTA order legislation. Is that
That's correct.
And 2018, is that with respect to the city of Monroe, is that the last city to adopt SOTA order legislation?
From my knowledge, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you. And then on to the heat map, slide 9, if you will. So this is a really good slide. Really appreciate the thought that went into this in terms of the data-informed approach and the heat maps, the hot spots. You can literally see it on a map. Just curious to better understand. There are, take for example the ID SOTA. So the heat map covers that blob there. That's presumably like the hot spot. That blob there covers about half of the proposed SOTA area for the ID, and just curious to kind of better understand the thinking behind or triggered by the known hot spots.
To apply. So some of that was the roadways are, again, the topography of the landscape, but not big enough that they're unwieldy.
Got it, thank you. And then final question for now, moving on to the final slide here, slide 11. And basically the old SOTA zones prior to 2010. You aptly pointed out, City Attorney Davidson, that these were large and difficult to enforce. And as you can see here, unlike I think you said 1/4% of 84 square miles or something of what the current proposal is, this is like just ballparking it. That looks about to be half of the city's landmass. And so I can definitely see how that might be large and difficult to enforce and unwieldy. But also really curious to understand the efficacy in terms of what these were. What was our city's crime data, overdose data, things like that, when these old SOTA zones were in place?
That, Councilmember, I'll say I don't know that data from the past, but I know that that looks like a substantial amount. It's about 40%, so you were right on, that it was a large amount of area. And when we're looking at the number of officers that we do have, again, where they need to be responsive is lots of places. So we're wanting to make sure that when they are looking at this type of an issue, it is a designated area that is identifiable easily, again with the topography, again with the social services. It's small enough to be applied by them in a way that is helpful in a strategic way, not something that is such a large place that it's actually ineffective for them.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd actually be really curious to better understand and get clarity on that last point. So in terms of what what the numbers look like when this was in place. So if Ms. Gorman could kindly work with you in your office or whoever, I don't know, and share that out, I would be curious to better understand that. Thank you. No further questions or comments at this point, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. You know, I also am remiss because I did not note that Councilmember Rivera joined us at the start of your presentation. So I'd just like to note and welcome, as I say always, other council members not on the committee are always welcome, and I'm happy to make this a select committee if they want to. So welcome, and I'm not seeing any initial questions from the committee members, so maybe I'll go to you, Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple quick questions. Taking up the point that part of the point Councilmember Saka is talking about in terms of enforcement, I have noted in these particular soda areas when I'm downtown a lot in both of these areas actually, and I do note that there are police and there has been emphasis in these areas as is, so I do see police there, and so in terms of enforcement, would that allow for enforcement of these particular soda areas? Because if we can't enforce, it makes it difficult, obviously, to have this. So do you have any information about, on the enforcement side, how the department is going to be rolling out enforcement and whether that emphasis helps, and is that part of like the full package? I guess what I'm getting to is I imagine you all are working with Mayor's Office and SPD talking about enforcement, and I know there's emphasis officers there currently, so is it envisioned that these folks would help on the enforcement side?
Yeah, I would say we have a policy related to enforcing soda zones that's well over a decade old, so that would have to be revised based on whether this legislation passed or not to then give direction to our officers on how that enforcement would work.
Great, so it's something that you are going to be working with SPD, well, your SPD and the Mayor's Office on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, terrific, thank you. And like I said, I do see officers currently there because I know these are areas that are currently areas of emphasis for the city, so hopefully that means that we'll be able to enforce. Seeing the officers there is helpful. And then the other question I have deals with just in general, how will you measure, in terms of good governance, as Councilmember Kettle likes to say, and in terms of, how will we measure whether this is working and that it is helpful if this does get passed as we move forward? What are the steps or the metrics, or I don't know a lot about this particular area, but how will we measure if it's working, and in order to be able to assess whether we should continue or we should expand it, et cetera? I imagine you've given some thought to that as well as you were crafting this.
Yes, and thank you, Councilmember Rivera, again, for being here. I appreciate that. We have built into the legislation to make sure there is a way to track that data that would be shared from my office, also with SPD. Again, to me, I think it's important that we have the collaborative approach that we seem to all talk about. That is making sure we are responsive together, because it is all of us together to be responsive to improve public safety. And so we would be looking at the number of referrals. I think it's paired, as Councilmember Saka said, with the number of overdoses. That's a key part. And also the revival of the economic activity in the area. And then it would be what you would hear from your constituents, right? And what I would hear from them, which is we see a difference. We are noticing that we are able to come in these spaces where we felt fearful before, we were threatened before, et cetera, all these things, we had thefts before. All of that should be shown to impact the associated criminal activity around the public drug use.
Thank you for raising that, because I do hear from constituents who really avoid coming downtown because of the activity that's happening downtown, and I know that's difficult. And I also hear from small businesses who are also being impacted. So really good to hear that you will be measuring that. And then, of course, there's always what we hear from constituents, including the small businesses. So thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. I know I don't sit on this committee, but it's really important to be engaged on this topic, all topics related to public safety, because I know that's something that my constituents very much care about in the D4. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and be able to ask questions. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Councilmember Rivera. You know, one of the points I mentioned earlier about the communications that we have here in public comment, but also in community, in my office and our offices and locations. So there's a lot of that which is going on important topics like soda. But there's also communications and meetings and discussions and the like with SPD, the mayor's office, the city attorney's office, different parts of the legislative branch. And, you know, I've spoken to Chief Rohr on this topic, and I note in Ms. Gorman's memo that the department, SPD, would instead endorse a more holistic means of evaluating the impact of a new soda zone that took into account foot traffic, business activity, and perceptions of residents, visitors, and merchants, as well as those law enforcement stakeholders and the various community groups who are frustrated by current conditions in the proposed soda zones. You know, I think that's an important point to have because I recognize there's a lot of different data sets and they need to be accounted for, both on the more traditional public safety side in terms of like the 9 organizations that fall under my committee, but then also the providers, the service providers and the like. And I think this note here, Ms. Gorman, really captures that. And Assistant Chief Mahaffey, can you speak to that point, that was observed and basically echoes, my conversations with members of the Seattle Police Department?
I think you're correct. I think we're always evaluating our strategies and how they're working, and I think we do that in conjunction, not looking at our own internal data, but also in conversations that happen at the precinct level with constituents in those areas about how the strategies that we are deploying are actually working, are they effective, and are they having the intended impact. And we're always, as you know, constantly evaluating how we're doing internally.
Thank you. And also, to stay with the police department, I know with my District 7 hat on that residents in different parts of District 7, Belltown, for example, which is another smaller area but just as impacted, they know who the drug dealers are, and they've been communicating these pieces to the West Precinct. So the West Precinct leadership team knows. And is there a good coordination between the precinct basically the captains, and then the headquarters in terms of how to make adjustments, what can we do, and what's needed to address the issues, because it's quite stark when you talk to the residents.
It is, and it's a complex problem. As you know, it's been going on for years, I guess, at various degrees, but I would say internally, I think coordination-wise, I think it's some of the best that I have seen in my time in department. As you know, we have the monthly CSTAT meeting. There are bi-weekly meetings where we review violent crime, drug activities throughout the city, to include West Precinct and downtown neighbors. So I think we're certainly on top of those issues and addressing them as they come up.
Thank you. City Attorney Davison, one of the things with our strategic framework plan as we look to tackle our public safety challenges throughout the city, and in basically the permissive environment that underlines everything, we have our different pillars, and one important pillar is Pillar 6, working with our county and state partners. And this is important and interesting in the sense that, we just had a discussion on the jails and the correctional facility, and we have to have these kind of conversations. But your briefing highlights, too, this idea that we need to have a handoff from the King County Prosecutor's Office and the City Attorney's Office in terms of how Blake has basically shifted from the state to the local municipalities, the cities, City of Seattle. And I don't think the state legislature and the governor, I don't think really has done the follow-up on this. And I think we're going to end up having to put that demand signal to the county and the state to say, hey, we need a pass down. We need a transition. We need support in this transition, and guidance and help and all the above. And I highlight that we should be working together, even despite Blake, with the King County, because as noted again in the memo, in the NOTS in the 06-09 period, where the city attorney's office was working with the King County prosecutor's office, a similar act at that time period, that there was a total of 1,310 cases filed. 208 cases, defendants opted to be charged in felony, 1,082 decided to abide by the SOTA order. And so it goes further to say in 83% of the SOTA cases, defendants did not violate their orders, and in 58% of them, defendants did not commit another attempted, basically, drug act in terms of what that act was called at that time. And it shows that, partnership. This goes to Pillar 6, working with the county, that, having a partnership with the county on this in terms of a transition and not have a, hands-off approach. We have to engage. So this is another area that we can engage with our King County Council counterparts, but also the executive, the mayor's office, and SBD can be working with, Executive Constantine, Sheriff Coldendell, and the like. And I was just wondering if you can speak to this period of cooperation and what we can do now, working in a, in a One Seattle way, working with the county.
I have a very good working relationship with King County Prosecutor Lisa Mannion, and our offices meet on a regular basis around the High Utilizer Initiative. We continue that on a weekly basis. So it is an area. We also have a shared regional domestic violence firearms unit that is responsive for a lot of gun violence response that we have for community. So we continue to do that. We look for additional ways we can support, because we do know that our line level staff and prosecutors are working together on many cases that plague our area. And crime does not take a break. It does not take a vacation. So they work, we work, because we are needing to be responsive to when criminal activity occurs. We are here to make neighborhoods and public spaces and our community as a whole safer.
Thank you. I note that Council President would like to ask a question.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you, City Attorney Davison, for bringing this forward and working so closely with Chair Kettle on this legislation. And it's been a group effort, and thank you very much for also participating in this presentation. So we've heard Interim Chief Rahr say that we have got to interrupt the market that supports the illegal activity going on downtown and elsewhere in the city. And we also, in the Governance, Accountability, and Economic Development Committee, heard the results of a report from the auditor called "Addressing Places in Seattle Where Overdoses and Crime Are Concentrated: An Evidence-Based Approach." And the first 3 or so recommendations are clustered in a section that says, "Use a research-informed methodology for place-based problem solving." And in my mind, this legislation and the SOAP legislation can't get more place-based than that, very defined areas. So to me, this is an attempt to target our limited resources, limited in terms of officer staffing, and also limited in terms of judges, et cetera. Target our limited resources where they will make the most difference. So one of the goals, according to the central staff, thank you, Ann Gorman, is that SOTA order is to disrupt a crime hotspot in order to help restore public order, improve public safety and quality of life for area residents, invite lawful behavior, and foster lawful economic activity. Now, we didn't get to all the public commenters. There were a lot of folks on this side of the room that I recognized from speaking on issues of downtown before. I have a question about this notion. SOTAs were in place before downtown, and then they were not. I understand that there was a program called NCI. I'm trying to find more information about that. But they were described to me as a method to keep people from prolonged trials. Because they are a pretrial order, can you speak more about how, in fact, they allow for corrective behavior that does not prolong the interaction with courts, jails, et cetera?
As I said earlier, it is based on an individual analysis on a case-by-case basis by a judge. And so that determination would be ruled by Court Rule 3.2, which is the presumption of release. And so it would have to be shown that this order needs to be in place, and that would be at the determination of the individual judge after analysis of that case. Again, it is one of the least restrictive ways because it is just saying you can't go within this specific area as opposed to taking somebody into custody. So it is a way to allow a balancing of this, to balance the need to, again, protect neighborhoods. Our international district is one that I really do think about a lot when we're talking about this topic. We heard a lot from some of our elder neighbors here today. This balances that, where we're trying to make those neighborhoods safer for people to be there and restrict the movement of someone who has been in that space just from that one space instead of other ways.
So you said instead of custody, correct?
This is a lesser restrictive thing than custody time, yes.
I think that is important for us to emphasize. So do you have any other questions? Go ahead.
No, I have no questions. I'm looking to transition to item agenda number 2. Do you have any further questions here?
They can be combined later. Thank you.
Okay, combined later. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to start to transition to agenda number 2, but I did want to say again, thank you for speaking to the Stay Out of Drug Area legislation, and thank you for presenting it to the City Council. And, highlighting my point about, Pillar 6 of the strategic framework in terms of working as a One Seattle with the county and the state. This also highlights, the elements regarding our criminal justice system. This came up in the jail discussion, but it also shows that this is giving discretion to the judges and something that needs to be understood as part of the overall effort. So, this goes to the greater criminal justice discussions that we have. So thank you very much. With that said, we will now move on to a second item of business. Will clerk please read item 2 into the record?
Council Bill 120836, an ordinance relating to prostitution, creating the crimes of prostitution, loitering, and promoting loitering for the purpose of prostitution, establishing policies governing arrests and for prostitution and prostitution loitering, creating stay out of prostitution, area of prostitution, SOAP zones, and providing for both the issuance of court orders relating to those zones and